Well, thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I've previously shared some of my frustrations with the administration, particularly Secretary Yellen, as it pertains to the administration. It's handling the OECD Pillar 2 negotiations. I highlighted my concerns specifically with the undertaxed profits rule. This rule uniquely disadvantages U.S. businesses. It allows foreign countries to tax the U.S. activity of U.S. companies. Again, for those who are watching these proceedings, this rule would allow foreign countries to tax the U.S. activity of U.S. companies. And these concerns are just the beginning. I have been actively involved here on the Hill, working with my colleagues on a bipartisan basis to ensure that we're investing in strategic sectors of our economy so that we can lead in these sectors moving forward and outfit our warfighters with the latest, greatest technologies. On the private side, we need to continue to encourage investments in R&D. Senator Hassan and I have introduced bipartisan legislation that would enhance R&D tax provisions in our tax code. Given this bipartisan support, I was really alarmed to see the Biden administration agree to rules at the OECD that would substantially diminish the value of our R&D tax credit. This is at a time where if you invest $100 in R&D here in the United States, you can deduct $10. In China, invest $100, it's a deduction, super deduction of $200. So that's who we're competing with. The OECD Pillar 2 rules confirm that non-refundable tax credits, like our R&D tax credit, receive far less favorable treatment than government subsidies and refundable tax credits offered in many other countries. This means that U.S. companies, which heavily invest in domestic research, an activity with a long history of strong bipartisan support, could be subject to additional tax by foreign countries because they qualify for the R&D credit, while foreign-based companies, either receiving a refundable R&D credit or direct research subsidies from their own countries for the exact same activities, are protected from a foreign revenue grab under Pillar 2. So, Mr. Morris and Mr. Bunn, I'll ask you both to respond to this question. Will Chinese companies receiving direct subsidies for research activities from the Chinese government receive more or less favorable treatment under the OECD agreement than U.S. companies taking the U.S. R&D credit? Mr. Bunn, we'll start with you, sir.
That is correct, sir. The way these rules are structured put subsidies in the income line, and non-refundable credits directly reduce the effective tax rate. So you're going to have the UTPR clawing back the tax benefits for non-refundable credits, whereas the top-ups wouldn't have as large of an impact on direct subsidies.
Thank you. Mr. Morris, I'll repeat the question again. Will Chinese companies receiving direct subsidies for research activities from the Chinese government receive more or less favorable treatment under the OECD agreement than U.S. companies taking the U.S. R&D credit?
Senator, thank you for that question. I'm going to actually answer it more broadly, which is that all countries which give their companies grants or subsidies will come off better than countries like the United States, but probably mostly the United States, who have non-refundable credits. And therefore, we do place our own businesses at a disadvantage under these circumstances. And to the point that you made earlier about the need for economic development, it appears that this is not completely joined up.
Thank you so much. I wanted to get each of your perspectives. I, of course, wanted to get your thoughtfulness on the record. I'll continue to make the argument that this is highly unwise tax policy. It's inconsistent with our competitiveness as a country and even our national security. I do expect that once people realize the implications of this so-called undertaxed profits rule, we're going to see bipartisan animus to the ill-advised undertaxed profits rule. if there's any hope of Congress acting on these matters, it'll only be after Treasury returns to the negotiating table to work out an agreement that actually serves the U.S. Interest of U.S. workers and their employers. And failing that, I fear we're headed for more tax and trade disputes that will only undermine our collective economic interests. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.